Welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast. I am your host, Lubna. The Entrepreneur Sushi Club podcast is a weekly podcast where we give you insight into the personality of successful sushi adoring entrepreneurs, showing you that success is all about having fun in and with your business without the hustle and the grinding. And as you know, if you've listened to any of our previous episodes, we have a guest. And this week's guest is all the way from Dubai, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking about the amazing Danielle Francisco. Danielle is the co-founder of Dan Media Group in Dubai, and he is a personal brand builder and the creator of the Drive to Succeed podcast. Danielle helps entrepreneurs, business owners, service based professionals build their reputation, generate revenue, build their own personal brand through PR strategies and podcasting. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Lubna. I'm excited to be here. And for our audience who's just tuning in, thank you and welcome to the show. And I pass the mic to you.
Awesome. So you are in Dubai, aren't you?
Yes, yes. Actually, I've been here for the past 11 years now.
Oh, we're going to dive into that one, but we're going to start with the most important questions of our podcast. Are you
Sure.
ready, Danielle?
I'm ready whenever you
What's your
are.
What's your favorite sushi and why?
One of my favorite sushi would be, I don't know what it's called, but there's an eel. I don't know what the name of that sushi is, but I
Yeah,
feel like,
yeah,
in terms of like flavor and texture of that sushi, I think that's really stood out to me. And it's not like honor because in the West, it's famous for the mackerels, the California things and that. But I find that the eel sushi is kind of a little bit exotic and much more closer when you go in Japan. So I haven't been in Japan, but I've been in a lot of authentic restaurants, and that's one of the sushi I always love to eat. So
awesome. And in what form? Do you eat them as a nigiri, for example, so the little rice and the eel on top, or do you eat it in a roll?
yeah, I eat it on top because I like to have it on top so I can like taste it properly. So
Is there any sashimi eel, by the way? Never.
I'm not sure what it's
Do you
called, to
know?
be honest. That's why I know that because my wife is the one who really loves to eat sushi. So every time we go together,
Yeah,
we just order this boat, love boat. I don't know if that's familiar with also in
yeah,
Netherlands.
yeah,
So we
yeah.
make sure that to have
Yes.
like a huge amount of eel on that and some avocado. There's one thing I also like. I think it's called a dragon roll or something. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what that is made of, but I can remember that that's also one of the things that stood out every time I eat. And then just the usual sushi stuff. But as an Asian and
Oh,
also as a coming from a Filipino background, we've been colonized by Japan. So eating sushi on a monthly or a weekly basis is not new for us. So I think that could explain everything.
oh. Well, I love it. I mean, I love sushi, and I'm not near Japan, nor have I ever been to Japan. And I heard you mention your wife. Had she any had did she have anything to do with you starting to enjoy sushi, or have you eaten sushi all of your life?
I've eaten a lot of sushi, but most of the time my wife is the one who's really influenced me a lot in terms of like eating. Because one of the things I learned is that as you travel frequently, not that frequently like before,
Yeah,
but as you travel, you gotta learn how to embrace different cultures and background. And I think one of the things about the sushi is that there's just some part of like exoticness into it that people would love about it, no matter what
yeah,
country you're in, what your background is. And it's quite interesting because, as time goes on, there's a lot of, you can say, like a hybrid approach into it. Like people are trying to combine sushi, Japan from maybe West, influence and this and that. I don't know if you have that also in Netherlands, but I think I'm not a chef. I'm
yes.
also an enthusiast in terms of like food. So I always keep myself up to date in those kind of things as well. So
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have. a restaurant here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam more specifically, who combine their sushi, makes sushi based on the Asian plus Caribbean style. So you
Wow.
get a sushi with those both flavors, which is amazing. I didn't know that this specific brand existed until I was in London and we went for sushi with a couple of friends. We tried to get sushi in every city that we travel to. And I discovered this restaurant who does this fusion sushi with Caribbean and Asian, which are two very interesting kitchens to combine. And then there I discovered that they have a restaurant also in Amsterdam. So I went to
Mm.
both, and it's very interesting to have fusion sushi, most definitely.
Yes, yes,
Do
exactly.
you remember when you had sushi for the very first time?
Hmm. That's quite an interesting question. I think
Yeah,
I can't remember as of now because in it's very accessible to us in terms of like even in the Philippines as well here. Like there are different
yeah,
types of sushi, right? There are times there are sushis where it's just your daily average grocery type of sushi where you can just buy for I don't know £5 or something, right? And then there's a middle tier where you go to like a semi,
yeah.
a fast food, and then the high tier. So I think probably I got it when I was maybe 12 or something. Because like
Uh-huh.
it runs in a family where we love to eat food, and that in terms of love of food, it also translates into um, experimenting into what's into our palates. And I think early on I got to taste sushi, but I only you can say enjoy it once I get married because sushi is meant to be shared, I believe. And the more
True,
you have like a platter and
true.
you have more people, the more you like you wanted to take more and this is all mine and you're just gonna enjoy the fun while doing that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I and it's so true. I mean, I love to have sushi. I mean, I enjoy it very much, and I've had sushi for many years. And I do tend to get some sushi from a place and take it home and eat it alone. But there's nothing like the experience of having sushi together. And you mentioned the Love Boat before, and we have a restaurant that offers a boat for two people, and you get it presented on a boat with different sushis. And I'm going to have that boat tomorrow again when
Wow.
I meet up with my niece. But it's such a beautiful experience to have together. So that's amazing that you've gotten to be introduced the first time. You're not one of the guests who's been the earliest. We've had a guest who's had sushi since he was 2 years old. So
Wow.
you can start really early. So another question, yeah,
Sure.
another question that we would love to explore on the podcast is because the purpose of our podcast is to give our listeners insight into the personality of people who love sushi, entrepreneurs who love sushi.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a very fun question to give people insight into the
Sure.
personality. So, if
Hmm.
your personality, your character, how you show up in the world were a sushi, what would the ingredients be and why?
Wow, this is the first time I encountered that question. Probably one of them would. I don't know what the name would be, but I'll mention first the ingredient because that's much more easy to eat. Number one, I believe, is that avocado. So because in avocado, right, it's a little bit hard on the outside, but on the inside, once it's melted into your mouth, you're gonna
Yeah.
figure out that wow, it's very good, right? So I think that's number one. Number two, of course, rice.
And why? Why? What does it, yeah, but what does it represent in terms of your personality? How do we know your avocado?
Sure. So one of the thing most people when they first encounter me, they feel like I'm kind of you could say strict in terms of like just my personality or just when most people doesn't know me, and that's one of the things that they misconstrued me, right? Because in
Yeah,
like especially right now you're interviewing me, I can be fun and all that, but when the camera turns off, sometimes I just love my alone time, and when I'm alone, I tend to think
yeah,
and reflect a lot of things. And I think most people misconstrue that because I always think about the future. What are things I need to accomplish today, in terms of health, business, relationships, those kind of stuff. And when people got to learn me and got to jump, the fence over that hard shell, then, or, they're gonna figure out, all right, so Daniel is a cool person. And that's why I'm not, I'm proud to say, but that's one of the things to say, that I have a very few, you can say, like, really people who got to know me, because they haven't got back to that first fence yet. So I'm very protective as well of the people I hang around
Yeah.
with. So that's one. Number two, yeah. So
Okay.
I think
Cool.
that's I don't know what is,
Yeah. Okay.
and secondly, I think, so rice, because I'm from Philippines. We cannot eat anything without rice, right? So that's number two. It doesn't matter what type of rice it is, as long there's rice. Number three, I probably would say maybe shrimp. So shrimp, avocado, and
Okay.
rice. What type of sushi would that be if you have that three?
Well, it depends. We're not yeah, we're not ready to construct yet. So, what does the shrimp represent in terms of your personality? What is it telling me about you?
So like I mentioned, so the avocado, it has an outer shell, unlike any other shrimp, right? Once you cook it, it becomes tender, it's become juicy,
Yeah.
and the outer shell,
Yeah.
sometimes the outer shell is just easy to peel out, because just what it is me, right? I might not, you can say, open up a conversation right away, but if you gotta, learn
Yeah.
how to, like, s- talk your way in, you can find out that my shell is not that really thick, and I'm just like any other like shrimp you can eat and have fun with, right? And then
Yeah.
a little bit, a sprinkle of, you can say, pepper and salt. I don't know why I mentioned that, but I think,
Yeah.
in life, you learn how to, like, experience a little bit of bitterness that comes with pepper and saltiness, because I
Yeah.
wouldn't be here if,
Yeah.
life is just smooth sailing along the way. So you got to learn how to do that. And I think, when it comes to salt, it's also one thing to preserve a lot of things, right? So I think that's also one of the reasons why
Yeah.
sushi is very edible and very, you could say, it transcends generation to generation, because it just have the exotic flavor into
Yeah.
it. So I think that's one thing. And for us Filipinos, it's similar to sushi, right? Wherever
Yeah.
part we go,
Yeah.
we still bring our roots, so we always make a mark in terms of what makes us authentic and what makes us, stand out from other, I'm not saying other race, but in terms of, like, our own uniqueness.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So let's construct it because you asked me what type of sushi.
Yeah.
So you can choose. I mean, you mentioned that you love the eel and you love it in the form of nigiri. So that is the rice bowl and the eel on top.
Hmm.
Now with avocado, rice, shrimp, you can choose to have it in that similar way. So you would have the nigiri, the rice, then the shrimp on top, which is raw in this case, and then an avocado slice and a little bit of salt and pepper on top. That could be
Hmm.
one. If you want to use nori, then it could be a roll. So we roll it up as makis,
Yeah.
which are the smaller rolls, or you can make it into a hand roll. And then when someone bites, they get all of the experiences in in the hand roll. So which one do you would you like? Is it
I
a
think.
is it a nigiri so they can eat it in one go? Is it a
Mhm.
maki, which is a smaller bite, which is more of an amuse? Or is it a hand roll where they get to experience it over and over again in all of the flavor mixed?
I think I would go with, hand. What's the second part? The, what do you call that part?
The
The
maki, which is the
maki. The
smaller
maki.
rolls.
Yeah, the maki.
Maki.
Right? Because that's, I think that's one of the familiar in terms of, like, comfort zone when people are trying out sushi. So for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
you gotta try it first before you actually enjoy it, and you gotta get used to it first, right? It's like any palate. If you're tasting it new, you gotta get used to it before you enjoy it. So I think that's kind of similar to me, because most people doesn't, I have a lot of things that might have being misconstrued at. But once you get the hang of it, like what my beliefs are, what my values are, you're gonna learn that, all right, it's just like any other sushi that I can enjoy today, tomorrow, or the day after. You know what I mean? So
I love that. That is a beautiful explanation of who you are. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I just love discovering all of these personalities and different people and their uniqueness. I mean, let's be honest, each and every one of us is different. So, we've gotten the your favorite sushi. We've talked about how your sushi journey started, and we have
yep,
spoken about your personality. Um, One more question to
sure,
close the circle on this one.
sure.
Would you say something different if I asked you if your brand, so Dan Media Group, were a sushi? Would it be something different?
No, actually, when I started, it's meant to be as an extension of myself. So I wouldn't say it would be different.
Spoken like a true personal brand builder.
Thank you.
Well, tell us, what does a personal brand builder do?
All right. So the reason why I go into this industry is because it's similar thing that what happened to me, right? Because
Yeah,
in 2015 when I started my business, it's a very traditional type of marketing agency, right? We do a lot of experiential activations and all of those stuff. But when the thing happened where you're left with clients with less budget, you're always trying to work and try to find a new gig or a new project that you can work on. And so I decided, all right, so if
yeah,
I'm tired of like shaking hands, meeting face to face, and trying to explain over and over again and qualify myself. So I said, what if I create a content where I can put myself out there without actually selling something, but just trying to educate my prospects, my customers, and try to add value in terms of creating content. And so I decided, all right, I'm not confident on video. I'm not confident in speaking. So I decided to start a podcast. And most people think that when you start a podcast, it's just another form of content, but actually it is not, because it's actually good for people who are just starting out with low confidence. Maybe they're just figuring out their voice, who they are, and it's a low barrier to entry. So I decided to start my own podcast, and that's where I developed my personal brand, because when you're always putting yourself out there, people are gonna notice, all right, so Daniel's speaking this, and that's what are the type of things that he can do for his clients. And most people will think, all right, you're getting on the top of their mind, right? And that's what personal
yeah,
branding is. And but
yeah,
most people think that personal branding is like a website aesthetics, the logos. Actually, it is not. The reason why personal brand is called personal, because it's gonna reflect of who you are as a person. So there are 5 P's in building your personal brand. Number one is purpose.
yeah,
So who you
yeah,
are, right? As an entrepreneur who's listening or watching right now, who are you as a person? What is your message, and what do you stand for, right? Because like Richard Branson, you mentioned earlier that what does my brand stand for. Richard Branson, when he built the Virgin brand, it's an extension of his brand. That's why all of the products that created resembles Richard Branson, because Richard Branson is the face of Virgin, right? So that's why it's a personal brand.
yeah,
And for us, it's just another way of communicating of who we are online that reflects who we are offline. So that's number one. Number two, personal story, right? I know we have less much of time, but if people listen to my story and on an interview or on YouTube, I shared my message, like how I got started, because I got laid off twice, and that's really where the catalyst of why I wanted to start a business, right? So personal story, you're gonna learn what are the stories that resonates with your audience, because it doesn't matter like how good or how great you are. If you are not relatable, then what's the point, right? So, as any
yeah, yeah,
entrepreneur is
true.
trying to build a personal brand, you're gonna learn to be vulnerable, because that's where the real breakthrough will happen in terms of like internal transformation, in terms of your customers, and external transformation as well.
Yeah,
And then number three, platform. So you have
awesome.
a podcast, and like myself, I have a podcast. So that's just one way to deliver your personal brand message, right? And for positioning, so in terms of like positioning, how do you position yourself?
Yeah.
one thing I love about this podcast is because you mentioned about sushi, and for the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I didn't really, expected the type of questions that will come out. And for me, that really stood out because I've been to a lot of interviews as well, and this is the first time that people ask me about sushi that in depth. So it's a good positioning, and it's one of the podcasts that I will surely remember for a long time. The last are the products, right? What are the type of products you create? And it's just that in terms of like online, in terms of like B2B, B2C, people are having a hard time to transition themselves, from offline business owner to an online business owner. The reason why you need to build a personal brand to build that gap, and sorry, build that bridge between that gap, right? Between offline and offline online.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
summarizes how I help entrepreneurs build their personal brand.
Awesome. So if I listened attentively enough, you mentioned the five P's:
Mhm.
purpose, personal story, positioning,
Platform.
products,
Yeah.
platform. That's the, I always miss one in these five types. Platform. Awesome. I think that that's very valuable
Hmm.
for our listeners, because each and every one of us has a personal brand. The question
Yes.
is your personal brand a reflection of what you want it to be right now, or is it something
Yes.
that it's not? Then you want to influence that as much as possible. Isn't that true?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
this is, sorry, you want to say something?
No, no, go ahead. No, no, go
No,
ahead.
no, no. Actually, you really touch on a very point that I really love to expand into more, because most people think when they wanted to build a personal brand, they need to position themselves as this go-to expert, right? Or like I'm this and that,
Yeah,
and most people fall into the lack of, let's say, integrity, because they wanted to fake it till they make it, which is a wrong way to build a personal brand.
yeah,
If you are in terms
yeah,
of like trying to learn some new things, tell your audience, all right, I'm just trying to learn new things. I'm not an expert, but maybe there's like level zero who I can help with. And the three things that I always talk about is that number one, you got to stay true to your values, because if I said something right now, and 10 years down the line or 15 years down the line, the internet is like a Xerox or a copy machine. Whatever you say is going to be copied hundreds or at least thousands of times in years. And you don't want your your son, your daughter, or whoever
yeah,
listening right now to find that link 10 years later, and you said something that might damage your reputation in the long run. And that is one way to really sabotage your success for long term. That's number one. Number two, speak because you have a message. And I don't just speak because, I love sushi. That's why I'm here. My wife loves sushi, and she influenced me. But I only speak when I have something to share. I could have been on podcast earlier, but I didn't. Go into other people's podcasts, because I believe that when I wanted to go on a platform, I make sure that I add something of value and something that is unique that haven't been heard of, right? And again, number two, the last part is being
yeah,
vulnerable, because what's the point if
yeah.
if people cannot relate to you? So
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I've heard from several people that are in the brand and branding space, and they really advocate building a personal brand and showing up as you. But that doesn't mean as showing as someone that is artificially made, but showing someone that goes through stuff. I mean, I spilled tea over my laptop yesterday evening. Now my
mm,
laptop won't start. I was really thinking, oh my God, how am I going to work if I don't have my laptop? I mean, there's a lot that I can do with on my phone, I can do on my iPad, but there are things that you just need to do on a laptop or a PC, minimum, because you need that space to be working on. And this morning, I almost cancelled having this recording, because I thought, how am I going to record this if I don't have my laptop?
yeah,
And I shared it on Instagram. I did a story. I said, "This is one. It's going to be one of those days where it's not going to work like I hoped it was going to work, because I'm missing a resource that is valuable to me in the way that I work."
yeah,
And I think we should be sharing more of these things when we think, why did it happen? Or as we've been doing multiple times on the podcast, is with the global pandemic, it was way more difficult to get sushi. So, despite the fact that I have sushi minimum once a week, that hasn't happened in a couple of months because I couldn't get the sushi. And we
Yeah.
shared that openly and vulnerably. And I think that that's really important in terms of relatability. So, Danielle, for people that are wondering, I want to get in touch with Daniel, I want to learn more about personal power. How can people connect with you?
So one of the best ways to connect with me is go on LinkedIn, find Daniel Francisco. My if you're watching this, you can find my face in there. That's the best way. Or on Instagram at Daniel underscore Francisco underscore. Send me a voice note and tell just message me up like, all right, I saw your video on Entrepreneur Sushi Club. With Lubna, so I'm interested to learn more, and that's how we can get started. Or the third part is they can go to the website danmediagroup.com. There's a contact page in there. There's a lot of resources as well that they can download and all that stuff, and they can just learn more about it. And if they're more like have questions and want to interact with me personally, just send me a voice note on Instagram or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Daniel, is there anything that we haven't shared that you would like to share as we're wrapping up our time together?
I think if most people listen, I mean, if like people are watching or listening to this right now, what I would say is that if you are online right now and you feel like you don't know where to get started, you know what? Just document your journey. It's the best way to get started with, and interact with your audience, build your tribe. Because it's not. I'm not saying that you can build a personal brand in a week or 2 weeks, but it's a long-term process. But if you don't use your voice, you will not get to a point where you can use your voice to influence and impact people. So start today, don't hesitate, just go to it and use your voice for the better to build your personal brand.
Oh, I think that's amazing advice. And start where you are right now. Take consistent action each and every day. However small action that is better than waiting until everything is perfect because we all know that that is never the case. Daniel, thank you so very much for joining us on the show.
You're welcome, Lubna. I hope to hear from you soon and your audience. Thank you once again for this opportunity. And I'm going to check out more on this podcast and make sure to share to my audience as well.
Okay, and for you that is listening or watching the video on our YouTube channel, thank you again for listening to another episode of the Entrepreneur Sushi Club. We would love to know what has been your biggest insight or takeaway from our time together. Please do take a moment and share it with us in our community on Facebook called the Entrepreneur Sushi Club. We will add all of the links, both to connect with Daniel as well as the link to our community in the description with this episode. And if you know someone who could absolutely benefit from listening to this episode, please do share it with them. The more the merrier. And if you are or know an entrepreneur or business owner who likes or loves sushi, then consider becoming our next guest. We would love to have you. For now, have fun and see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.